They've all said we're coming next year. So we can say that. We can also confirm that we will be here next year. We will be we'll be sending out details of that as soon as everything is confirmed. Obviously that takes a bit of organising, but we'll definitely be back in 2024, which is fantastic. I'm personally very, very happy about that. So that's really, really good news from our country. But we have had a great time. I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves here this weekend. We know that we've had a lot of very positive feedback, which is great, and not that much griping. We get a bit of griping in the UK.
Well, there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough of this and leaves. It was cold. It was cold. What about the sandwiches? They weren't very nice.
Actually, to be fair, on the very first one we did in Silverstone in 2018, because no one expected as many people to come as came, and we ran out, the caterers ran out of food at 11 o'clock in the morning for the first day, which is quite early. And so then there were trucks reversing up really fast, unloading food, and people were just grabbing it and eating it. But that was, so hopefully we've organised that a bit better today. But anyway, that's enough. So, Jack, what was it like for you?
I'm normally really shattered at the end of these show weekends. I just feel kind of mentally drained, but I feel energized by this weekend. I think we're completely blown away by how many of you turned out and how passionate you guys are about this technology. You know, this stuff is relatively new in this part of the world, so we kind of figured you're all either kind of not interested at all or absolutely gagging for it and just not getting it for the longest time, and happily for us, it's the latter. I've spoken to so many people this weekend, and it's just been overwhelmingly positive, optimistic vibes. And I think that this show is going to triple in size next year.
Yeah, no, it definitely will. It definitely will. Simone, it's been such a joy for us to actually meet. I mean, for both you and Elliot and Rosie and Sam. You know, we haven't met any of you before, but how's it been for you to dive into this?
It has been amazing. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity that you guys gave me to be here. I felt a bit of an invisible pressure that I hope Australians turn up in droves, yes. And I've been so amazed and blown away and so excited and proud that Australians have shown up here and supported Fully Charged, and also all of the technologies that we're delving into. So I'm a proud Australian today.
Great stuff. Thank you. Elliot has has travelled gently and openly and without pressure from China for the first time in 4 years.
Yes, it does feel like I escaped.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's been absolutely mind-blowing for me because, you know, I haven't met anyone here, you know, I haven't had any real feedback in person, and to meet everyone here today has been so positive that we love your videos, we love what you're doing, we love to see what's going on in China. In real life is just really amazing for me. I'm so happy, and I'm just delighted that I'm here, and a very, very warm welcome from everyone, so thank you.
So, I mean, should we do, does anybody want to ask any sort of question at all? No? Oh, okay. Jack, you're very
Key of truth.
You're better at throwing than me.
Well, let's see. Here you go. Oh, yes.
Beautiful. Wow. I've got to say, I am going to say that I've said it quite a few times, but I'm going to repeat it one more time. Australians are better at catching than English people. I'm just going to leave that there. I don't know if that means anything.
Cricket.
Hi panel. My question is really, what do you think it's going to take in Australia, given you've got a world perspective, to create the aftermarket industry? The context is that I, as an early adopter, even though I got an imported Nissan Leaf, it's struggling these days, and I wish, like yourself, Robert, I could get it over somewhere in Europe and get it sorted, or North America, or even New Zealand I can get sorted, but here I can't. It's awesome to hear that we're getting like things like tow bars and whatnot, but to get that other part of the industry going, what does it take?
I mean, I think it's down to numbers of people with, it's down to numbers, isn't it? And I mean, if there were 500,000 Nissan Leafs in Australia, there would be an enormous industry around to support that, to service them, to replace batteries, to do all that. And it's just still in its very nascent stages at the moment here. And I think I don't know what other solution there can be other than time. And as you heard in the last panel, it is a painful, slow process, this first push to get to that point. And we've now seen it in enough countries that when it passes a limit where it just becomes, where it spawns new industries, where it spawns new companies that support it, and it's just to do with numbers. So in the UK now we've seen a complete transformation. There's so many electric cars, and suddenly there's a whole new array of businesses and industries that are there to support that. I don't know how else it can happen.
I think one of the people on my panel was saying earlier that the government electrifying their fleets and turning them over quicker could be a way to really push the second-hand market for EVs in Australia. So that's potentially a way that we can sort of accelerate that process.
Yeah, and there's certainly businesses in the UK where really large businesses are buying fleets of electrics. They're not buying one or two, they're buying 7,000. And once that happens, you then get this enormous, in a few years there will be an enormous amount of second-hand electric vehicles on the road, and our second-hand market has really expanded. I mean, I presume there's got to be a massive second-hand market in China though.
Oh yeah, it's huge. You can pick up a second-hand EV for just a few $1,000s. Sorry.
It makes you sick when you hear this stuff. It's just not fair.
But I think, Australia's at the beginning of its journey. We're right at the start of this transformation, and as you can see around you, these industries are new, but there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of these conversion kits for the cars and stuff. So once that starts building up, I think it's going to change very quickly within the next year. And I think I was actually speaking to someone earlier who said, "Can you ship me some batteries from China?" I said, "Let me look into it."
I suppose on the subject of batteries as well, what we're increasingly going to see is third parties able to get their hands on brand new batteries straight from a battery factory, as opposed to having to wait outside the junkyard for someone to roll their Tesla and then arm wrestle all the other shops for the good bits. Right, so at Felton, the guys that we have over here with the beautiful resto-modded electrified classics, those guys are building these bits from scratch, essentially. And more and more common, it will become more and more common for shops to be able to get off-the-shelf batteries, off-the-shelf EV componentry. And as soon as that happens, maintenance, aftermarket stuff, EV conversion, all becomes so much more achievable.
Yeah.
Plug and play.
Do we have any other questions? I don't know. Oh yeah, can you throw? Go over there. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Oh, here we go.
There
Big
we go.
pressure
It's
from
gonna get-
big
it's gonna be
pressure.
good. Oh, brilliant. What's that?
And into the bread basket.
Australians are good at catching. There's no question.
It's a low bar.
It's a very high bar for me, so I'm impressed.
If I cared about cricket, I'd be offended by that.
Given that we have a lot of talk about the cost of batteries, and we talk about things like vehicle to home because of the cost of batteries, I've got a Tesla. If I have a Tesla sitting there, that's the equivalent of cost of or Tesla Powerwalls and energy. So it's kind of like buying batteries and you get all the wheels and everything for free. But if battery technology changes, hypothetically, say it was a quarter of the price, how do you see that? What's that going to change? Like, will we still care about vehicle to home? Will we still care about vehicle to grid? How is that going to change the car landscape? Are they going to be suddenly so much cheaper than alternatives that it's a no-brainer? And the second part of that question is, how likely is that to happen?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, there was an article today, what day is it? No, yesterday in the Daily Telegraph in the UK, which is anything but a tree-hugging, lefty, liberal, green publication about a new battery technology that is now being tested out, and I cannot remember. I'll tell you why I don't know all about it, because I didn't want to pay the Daily Telegraph to be able to read the whole article. So that's my failing. But, and I'm not saying that this particular technology is different. I knew that it had zero cobalt, it had very low amounts of nickel. It's a completely new battery chemistry. One of these new battery chemistries is going to work in the next 5 years. There are billions of pounds of research going into new battery technology. There will be smaller, lighter, cheaper, longer lasting, more powerful batteries emerging out of this. It's just inevitable. It's going to happen. And this article it had convinced a journalist I know who is anything but. He doubtfully would be a panelist at a Fully Charged Live. He wouldn't join us. But he was saying, if this technology works, it is without question the end of fossil fuels. It is absolutely going to kill it because it's so much cheaper. So it doesn't matter what any other arguments you make. It's an economic choice. You'll get the car that is cheaper, that lasts longer, that goes further. And they're talking about 1,000-mile range batteries on average. So if that happens, who needs a 1,000-mile range anyway? But if it would mean you could charge a car once a month and you don't have to think about it, or you could run your house off it for weeks, you know. But I think you're right. I think once battery technology gets, has been predicted for a long time, gets genuinely cheaper, then have a battery in your house. You know, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home. It is a debatable area as how sensible that is, but you know, I don't know.
I'm certainly no chemist, but from speaking to people much cleverer than myself, I feel pretty damn confident these batteries are going to get smaller, lighter, more efficient, and crucially, much cheaper. And that creates all sorts of really exciting possibilities. I think for one, it makes the cars cheaper. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Because they are prohibitively expensive at the moment. But more than that, it will enable car brands to really start to express themselves and get creative with what they're building. There is a reason that all of these car brands are starting with big, gigantic SUVs with 9 touch screens and camera wing mirrors and silly magic tricks. What they're doing is hiding the cost of that battery with toys and trinkets, right? And it's cynical, but I can stretch myself to understand it because they are businesses. They have to at least break even on these cars. It's frustrating, and we want to see the smaller stuff as soon as possible. But it's very difficult for these brands at the moment. We have the Fiesta in Europe, which is the really dinky little Ford model, my first ever car. They've killed that. They've killed that car in Europe, the ICE version that is, because they cannot turn a profit on small cars. And that's just the state of the industry at the moment. So I'm impatient to see these batteries get smaller and cheaper because it will enable smaller and cheaper electric vehicles, and those are the ones that we are really interested in here.
Yeah.
Aptera.
Aptera, yes.
Yeah, I know. I would like one of those. Are they coming next year was the question there. I mean, I really hope so. I'm pulling for those guys.
We will be begging them to. I don't know that they will.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what an Aptera is, it looks like a dolphin with solar panels and 3 wheels, and it's amazing. And it
does surprisingly good burnouts.
and it does burnouts. And I don't know what it does. I don't know how many miles to the kilowatt hour it is, or kilometers, but it's a lot. It's very efficient.
It's 100 miles for every 10 kilowatt hours of battery matter. So the 100 kilowatt hour version, which I don't know why they're making with a battery that big, goes 1,000 miles.
Oh, that does go. Oh, there you go. We've got a 1,000-mile car. Fine. Can we go? I guess if you can go that way, and then we'll come back this way.
Hi, I'm probably asking you to look into the future, but at what point do you think the percentage of electric vehicles will be the tipping point that ICE vehicles will become valueless? And the next question is, at that point, is it going to be a dystopian future where you drive your future Tesla or this Leaf down a road and you see paddocks full of stacks of ICE vehicles in a pile that can't be recycled or whatever, like the problem we have in Australia with soft plastic?
Yeah. I mean, Elliot, can you talk about that? Because it's such a different situation in China.
So I think, in China I think we're going to hit that point this year. Just recently there's been massive price cuts in the market for electric cars. I told a story earlier about the Toyota. They're really struggling to sell it in China, and so what they've done is this special deal where if you buy the electric Toyota, you get a free hybrid Toyota car.
You're kidding?
And they sold 2.
Wow.
A little toy in your cereal box.
Wow. That is amazing. Wow.
And so other manufacturers are having to respond to these price cuts, which Tesla started. And what's happened is the ICE cars, so the electric cars have reduced by, 5-10%. The ICE cars have reduced by 50% because no one's buying them. And so we're at that point now where at the end of this year, no one's really going to buy any more ICE cars. There's no benefits, the gas price is too expensive, and they're all going to end up in landfill, or recycled hopefully.
Yes. Yes.
So it's happening. We're about 20% EV penetration rate. I think we're going to reach about 25-30% this year. So it's at that point that everything changes. So it can happen very quickly, and it's good.
I think one of the I took part in I didn't travel there. It was on a Zoom call, an African EV conference, one of the first ones they've done. It was really incredible and exciting and different and just a whole different world. But they are often flooded, and this is probably more likely what will happen. They will be flooded with virtually free old internal combustion vehicles from developed countries, and they'll just dump them all there because they don't know what else to do with them. And they're saying we really don't want them. And obviously this is the community within Africa that want to adopt electric vehicles. So, you know, I don't think they're going to be, whatever happens to the millions of, the literally hundreds of millions of internal combustion engines that will be replaced, they're not going to be left in piles. The materials in them are too valuable. They'll be mashed up and recycled, as they already are. I mean, you know, that is happening now.
Walkham's
It'll
early.
speed up as well once if the government puts in place the fuel efficiency standards that we're kind of gunning for. If that happens, we stop being a dumping ground, basically,
Yes,
for the
that's
car
the same
companies
here, yeah.
giving us their internal combustion engine vehicles. And that will just, you know, it will be an exponential explosion of EVs once that point happens. So we just need to keep advocating for that. And then, you know, it will eventually reach a point. 2035, ACT has said that they're not going to register an internal combustion engine vehicle at all. So maybe every state needs that kind of hardline approach.
It's also, I mean, I've had this confirmed a couple of times today that the two countries on the planet that have absolutely no emissions controls at all are Australia and Russia. So, which is not something to be
A fun list.
not a fun list to be on. Quite a short
Not at
list.
all.
I think you should invade New Zealand. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
We're already started on
And
Australia.
Movies, Robert Llewellyn incites war in Australasia.
Sorry, I didn't say that. Hello, yes, ma'am.
So, just further to that question, along the same lines, at what point do you think supply chain for fossil fuels is going to collapse because you need a certain volume for profitability? So even if you've got loads of cars and it haven't been replaced yet, if there's no fuel there because it's just not cost efficient for them to send it around the world to everyone, what percentage, you know, EVs is that going to cause sudden collapse?
That's such a fascinating question. You lie in bed at night dreaming of
I
this
do.
scenario, don't you?
I'm very lucky to have the last couple of years been involved in a thing called the Aurora Energy Summit, which is in Oxford, and I shouldn't be allowed in at all. I mean, the average IQ of the people who attend that is about triple what I could possibly manage, but they let me come in because I get a couple of old professors to laugh. But what they talk about there is how the fossil fuel. So this is people. So Van Buren was there last year from Shell, so he was the boss of Shell, he spoke there. So it is the people who work in the fossil fuel industry trying to understand how they can adapt, because we're never going to not use any fossil fuel. I don't think that's going to happen. What my argument is always, let's stop burning it. You know, there's some really useful things come out of fossil fuel, pharmaceuticals, fertilizers, plastics, you know, and we can say, yes, there's an enormous waste of plastics, but actually plastics are really useful products that we can make amazing things out of plastics. But we shouldn't be burning it. But then the argument then is, how do you make it economically viable to extract oil, use it without burning it? So massive reduction in the amount you extract. I mean, it's like 90% less we would extract. But how can we chemically transform that fossil fuel into useful products and make it a viable business? And I don't think anyone knows. But I think they know it's happening. That's all I can. The one thing I glean from that is the people in that industry who are forward-thinking and intelligent enough to bother to think about it. And I think there's plenty of people in the fossil fuel industry who literally don't give a toss because they're still selling enough of it at the moment not to worry about it. So they're just going, it's not happening. But the ones that are thinking about it, and I think I have to say BP and Shell are probably the two big global companies that are considering it. They're also greenwashing, lying, and using as much obfuscation as they possibly can. It's not to let them off, but they are thinking about it. How on earth are we going to transform into a low or zero carbon industry, which at the moment they're definitely not. That's all I know.